Greetings, John Abendroth here with our latest Zoomcast. Tom Spencer, regular partner doing these. And greetings, Tom. I can see you're not at home, but you're live somewhat at Kiowa Island. We just chatted offline about some of the logistical things of you staying in another city and a bus ride and a shuttle, and so the joys of traveling the PGA Tour.
Yeah, you're right. Charleston's a great city, John. In this situation, it's not ideal if you don't want to have long commutes. But we've got one this week, and we understand it. We were here 9 years ago for the PGA, and it was a similar setup. So most people that are attending this event, working it, will be commuting from Charleston probably about 45 minutes, each way, maybe longer with traffic, and then most of the players actually will be staying right on the island in rented homes. So they'll be in close proximity, probably getting nice, good walks on the beach in the morning. It's a pretty place to host a tournament. And this is some dramatic golf course that is going to provide a very interesting and dynamic test this week.
Well, you asked me if I'd been there. I have not, but my wife has. Rose did a medical conference there once, and it just didn't work out for me to travel along with her. So anyway, let me get a couple of the business things out of the way. Sponsored today by our friends at Original Joe's of Westlake. A great place to stop after the Women's U.S. Open the week of June 3 to 6 at the Olympic Club right next door, and we'll talk about that championship in a moment. Or you can stop there other times as well. And our old friend John Handlery, the Handlery Hotel, like the rest of San Francisco, is opening up. As we speak, they are currently open weekends through the month of May, and then starting June 1st, they'll be open full-time, and they have a new program called Save Now, Stay Later. You commit to a package at a very attractive rate, and you can use that during the year. You can check in with them at either HandleryUnionSquareHotel.com in San Francisco, or toll free at 800-999-995-HUSH, 800-999-995-HUSH for information about their packages at the Handlery Union Square Hotel. Tom, the PGA was held at Kiowa Island in 2012. Rory McIlroy, an incredible win by 8 shots. And, this makes him sort of the pseudo defending champion when you come back to the same course. And, he's sort of challenged for some wins lately, but he seems eager to touch the silver again.
Yeah, no doubt. He's still stuck on 4 majors, if you can call it that, John, searching for that elusive 5th and beyond. And he did have a very impressive win a couple of weeks ago at Quail Hollow in Charlotte, a course that's actually hosted the PGA Championship not too long ago when Justin Thomas won. So it's a major championship venue. And he learned a lot that week about his game. He's got a new instructor, Pete Cowan, who's got him now hitting fades off the tee. So when Rory was here in 2012, it was pretty much exclusively the high draw that he's hit throughout his career. And one thing that's a little bit misleading, this is going to be, and it seems like we say this, if not every year, every 2 years, the longest major championship golf course in history. But at over 7,800 yards, the idea for many, John, is that long hitters are going to prevail this week and dominate. But the reality is, back in 12, and it was played in August, it was actually very wet that week. The course was soft, and Rory, was the number one driver that week in terms of distance off the tee. But when you look through the leaderboard and went down about 20 spots, there were very few long hitters that were in contention. So now he's hitting a fade. So again, the high draw is probably still in his arsenal, but he's putting it in play more. And that's big here. Pete Dye gives you room off the tee. When you stand on these tees and you look out and you don't see much, you see tall grass, you see estuaries, you see water. You don't see a lot of green, but then when you get to the fairway and you kind of look back to the tee, you realize that it's actually twice as large as you imagine. The trick here is the second shots. You're playing in crosswinds. For instance, early this week, the winds were blowing steady 20 miles an hour. So you're playing crosswinds, into the wind, downwind. And if you miss the greens, there's tremendous fall off. So really, to me, this course rewards ball strikers in terms of iron play and very imaginative individuals around the greens. Now, Rory has all those facets, but that might not be his dominant characteristic. But he certainly dominated here 9 years ago, and I'd expect him to be in the hunt again.
A commentary I heard this morning was that players who hit the ball high could have a negative effect on their game because of the wind that does stay up. And they pointed out Bryson and Rory in that particular case. I thought about Rory winning here, that, maybe he channeled his Irish background, playing on coastal courses there. But
Yeah.
Curious about the height, the way they hit it, and with literally no trees around, that, you're not going to have, channels of wind blocked by trees.
Yeah, good point. Actually, in a way, it makes it somewhat easier because the wind's going to blow from the same direction all day. Whereas, like, say we're at the Masters at Augusta, the wind seemingly, as you disperse yourself through the various elevations on that property, the higher elevations, it's easier to pick up the direction. You get down your amen corner, and all of a sudden, it's coming from 4 or 5 different directions in the span of 60 seconds. Here, it's going to be pretty evident when you stand on the first or the 10th tee, the first 2 rounds, which way the wind is coming from. The trick, though, John, is that, as I said, every hole seems to change angles. You don't play 2 repetitive holes generally in a row going exactly the same direction. So you're constantly having to sort of fight the crosswinds. And then, to your point about throwing the ball up in the air, if you were playing, like, say, a traditional links course over in Europe, you'd have the ability to run the ball up on the green surfaces, potentially landing at 20, 30 yards short downwind, or playing a low shot into the wind and knowing that at least it would bounce 5 to 10 yards forward. Here, though, as I said, the greens are raised and they fall off on all sides in some situations. I'm thinking of the third hole. You're only hitting sand wedge into a par 4, but if you miss the green, you go 20 feet down the hill. So you can't play the traditional bump and run shots from the fairway or from the angles that might be the 50-yard pitches. You do have to throw it high in the sky at times just to give yourself a chance to hold the green. So depending on the firmness, and it seems pretty firm right now, it could be an extraordinarily difficult test, but fun
Yeah,
to watch.
yeah, good. I got to get my little pairing observation out of the way, and I'll couple it with a couple of bits of history. A great pairing, and glad to see John Daly is in the field on the anniversary of 30 years from him winning that spectacular PGA in 1991. He's paired with Jimmy Walker, and I find Jason Duffner a perfect person for that grouping. And I went back and looked at John Daly's finish in the PGA on paper. Bruce Litsky was runner-up, and tied for 7th was David Feherty.
Yes, he was.
Which was pretty cool to see. And John's had a couple of great tournaments lately on the Champions Tour. One where he had a water debacle on the last hole, or he would have won.
Yeah.
Certainly those weren't on a 7,800-yard golf course, but hopefully John can, make a good showing here.
Yeah, and he's been getting a lot of attention here lately with the 30th anniversary, which is hard to believe. And on a Pete Dye golf course, let's not forget the Crooked Stick, and that was the first time that anyone had really seen that property in a competition of this magnitude. And Daly famously drives all night from Memphis, Tennessee, as the 9th alternate, gets into the field when Nick Price withdraws, uses Nick Price's caddy, and dominates the field in spectacular fashion. So he's coming to a Pete Dye course here, very difficult and maybe more challenging venue than I would say Crooked Stick was and is. One thing I was going to mention earlier, John, about this course, getting back to Daly in a second, they have 7 sets of tees here. Now, this is a resort golf course. So the forward tees, the difference between the forward tees and the back tees is 2,500 yards.
Wow.
So again, they can move the tees around here depending on the conditions, the wind, and really create a whole new dynamic each and every day. You could play the same hole 4 straight days and have them have that hole play completely different depending on length, wind direction, hole locations, etc. So that it's really a setup paradise if you're into that sort of spectrum. But Daly was talking a few weeks ago, and Jim Nantz actually interviewed him, and I believe Jim is going to publish this little Q&A in an upcoming magazine issue with Golf Digest. And at one point, he asked Daly about DeChambeau, and he said, "Who's longer back in the early '90s using persimmon drivers, or at least the earliest versions of metal drivers, you or Bryson? And conversely, who would be longer today if you were still in your prime?" He said, "I would have been 40 yards longer than DeChambeau in the early '90s. And in my prime now," again, saying he's still 25 years old, DeChambeau with modern equipment would be, 40 yards past me. But Daly thinks that in his heyday, he would be still dominating even Bryson DeChambeau off the tee. That shows you how long he indeed was at that point in time.
Wow, yeah, that's wild. I got to touch on one other pairing, just because they've been in the news lately. Padraig Harrington is paired with Phil Mickelson, who just, I believe, this week received a special invite to the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines this summer. And then Jason Day, there's been a lot of conversation about Jason's status. He is not in the U.S. Open, and he is saying that he will not try to qualify. And there was talk about, should he or shouldn't he have a special invitation? But interesting grouping of those three guys at their different statuses of their careers. And Padraig is I believe 49, has had a couple of pretty good events recently. So interesting to have those three guys paired.
Right, and the reason they are together, John, is they pair past PGA champions the first two rounds. So Harrington will be the captain of the European team at the upcoming Ryder Cup at Whistling Straits, a Pete Dye course, where Jason Day, in fact, won his lone major championship back in 2015, beating Jordan Spieth. Mickelson won it at Baltusrol back there in 2005. So, of those three guys, I really can't say that any one of them jump off the page, and make you think that they can put four great rounds together. Because let's face it, in a major championship on a course this difficult, even par is, if not a great round, is darn good. And I don't think, Phil just showed you a few weeks ago, he shot 64 the opening round at Quail Hollow and then couldn't break 70 the rest of the week. Jason Day's confidence seemingly waning, and Harrington's probably pretty distracted with what's coming up for him later this year. So that's the challenge here for the veteran guys: is can you put four good rounds together on a course that's just going to really be very taxing? It's going to be entertaining to watch it. It's going to be a great week for television viewing and for the fans at home to just see a course that has so much character and good, tough holes, and also holes that are, manageable and can be birdied and eagled. And yet for these guys, it's going to be a very arduous four championship days ahead.
Yeah, and I see that Steve Stricker, the American captain, is in the field, and that's great. Stricker, boy, the ageless wonder, has had some great events lately. Just lost in a playoff, but doing very, very well. Last question on the PGA, and then we'll jump to talk about the women a little bit coming to San Francisco. My impression is that the PGA Championship has maybe elevated its status amongst the four majors, as it has now moved from the August date that it has had to May. Ironically, last year it was supposed to be played in May, but because of COVID, it went right back to almost its exact date. But that's my impression. What do you feel, and what do you hear from maybe the PGA of America folks?
Yeah, I just had a flashback there, John, thinking of how strange it was for me, for you, and for all, I'm sure, your loyal viewers and listeners, to have a major championship in the Bay Area, and that felt like the height of the pandemic. Just being at Harding Park, and there was nobody there, and the fog came in every day. It was just so quiet, and yet it was such an amazing tournament. Colin Morikawa with that incredible finish down the stretch wins it. And back to your original premise, I think the PGA was definitely struggling in the 80s and early 90s. If you want to rank the majors, most people probably would have said it's the fourth one that's watched, fourth out of four, and maybe even a few players might have said, well, if I win a major championship, they're going to list the Masters first, the Open, and the Open second, and third, and the PGA fourth. Then strangely, what happened in my world when I got out here was Tiger Woods started winning the PGA a lot. He won it in '99, beating Sergio. 2000 is still one of the most exciting golf tournaments I've ever witnessed in person against Bob May at
Yeah.
Valhalla. He won it twice more in 2006, 2007. He was a perennial contender, even going back 3 years ago in St. Louis. Remember that one, John, where he shoots 64 the last day? So when the greatest player of this generation is competing at a high level in any major, but let alone the PGA every year, it elevates the status. So I always loved having it as number 4, selfishly for us, because we got to start the major season at Augusta and culminate it with the PGA. And it was a nice sort of bookend symmetry as far as TV work. But having this event in May, and the weather is still transitioning. I live on the East Coast, and you're not really, some days it doesn't feel like you're totally out of winter yet, but spring is still cool. And even though the golf season is up and running nationwide, I mean, if you get a cool weekend, temperature wise, and a lot of eyeballs for a May date, you're going to have a pretty big audience. And a course like this will definitely attract people. Do tune in to see golf courses, and they're going to see a beauty here. So if you get a good leaderboard and good competition and a tournament that can go late into the evening hours on the East Coast, generally a viewership will be high and attention will be big, because let's face it, NBA playoffs are about to start. Good luck to the Warriors, by the way. But Major League Baseball's kind of in its early stages. NFL draft is behind us. So there's a good slot here in May to really grab the sports viewers' attention, and hopefully they can do that here this week.
And right after May, we run into June. The first week of June, the Olympic Club is hosting the USGA Women's Open. Very exciting preparation for that, June 3 through 6. Golf course looks great. It'll be very curious to see how the women play it compared to the men who we just saw there 9 years ago. And what I'm hearing is that they're going to have the rough be very, very difficult, because the women are known to be fairway hitters and able to drive the ball very well. So they're going to make the rough a little more penal than it is even for the men. But a great field. Paula Creamer, an original Bay Area native, has gotten a special invite. Michelle Wie is in the field in a comeback sense. Lucy Lee, the phenom, is now 18 years old, believe it or not, and she qualified out at, I believe, at Half Moon Bay. So really rounding out to be a great championship at the Olympic Club in San Francisco.
Yeah, and Lydia Ko, who's had success just down the road at Lake Merced, is back on her game. She just won a few weeks ago in Southern California. Jessica Korda, both the Korda sisters are playing at a high level. So, yeah, you're going to have the cream of the crop. I was thinking back in 2012 when the PGA was here at Kiowa, John. The U.S. Open was at Olympic that same summer, as you recall. And the only course that played tougher than Kiowa worldwide that year was the Olympic Club Lakeside. So we know the lake course is very challenging under normal circumstances, and you give it a USGA setup. And I like that. I think, the quality of play that the women are going to produce at Olympic, the guys come in there sometimes and seem like they try to overpower it. And the course so well. It can be, maybe a few holes that could be the case, but it's really kind of a positional course, and it's how you handle the different terrain. It's so hard to simulate the side hill, uphill, downhill lies on a driving range. The only way you can do it is to play that course over and over and over. And if you get the type of weather that June can produce on the coast in San Francisco and Daly City, it's a fantastic test. So West Coast Major Championship golf brings a lot of eyeballs, as I said earlier, and that's when I'm talking about Kiawah Island. That's an East Coast venue, but for a West Coast venue, Olympic Club is absolutely the cream of the crop, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, and middle of the greens. Just aim at the middle of the greens, and worst case, you're gonna have a 20 footer or 25 footer. So that's not bad on a championship layout if you can get there, and lots of championship golf down the road here. We talked about it offline. The 23 Women's Open at Pebble, 25 U.S. Amateur back at Olympic, another U.S. Open at Pebble. We got this year at Torrey Pines. So, and I should also mention that the Meta Heel LPGA event is at Lake Merced the week after the Women's Open. So the players are locked in for a couple of weeks here, and so lots of good golf for the spectators here, and we do have a group of both members and public spectators will be allowed. The current number, and I don't want to be held to it, but about 5,000 total will be allowed at Olympic at this stage as we speak here in the middle of May. So be nice group on there, and certainly not overcrowded.
Yeah, and I guess speaking from my own experience over the last really, well, we'll call it a year, but I was home in June, July of last summer working, but starting in August at Harding Park and then doing the NFL last fall and winter, the Masters a couple of times. I've been to a lot of events, John, with not a single spectator there. So 5,000 people, if that's the number, that's great. If it goes higher or lower, so be it. We were at an event in North Carolina 2 weeks ago where I would guesstimate there were 15 to 18,000 people alone around the 18th green on Sunday watching McIlroy win. I mean, so it makes a huge difference. And then you add to it, maybe a storyline. So getting back to the PGA briefly, remember Jordan Spieth going for the career slam. Those are the things that hook people and get them excited. And when all these folks who are at home they're coming out of this very challenging situation that we've all been over the last whatever it is, year plus, 15 months or so, to see excitement on TV and particularly in a sporting sense and have a story going with it. Hopefully Spieth can produce that this week, and hopefully we can find stories of equal stature when the women come to Olympic in a few short weeks.
And I promise this is the last topic for you. And I know I already said that. Masters champion and new sports emperor of Japan, Hideki Matsuyama, coming in here with the only chance of a Grand Slam. What's the media attention like, and what's the aura around him as we start the PGA Championship in just a day or so?
Yeah, it would be totally different than what it would have been 2 years ago or what it might be 2 years from now. In other words, he went home to Japan, which normally would be a hero's welcome, and he flew straight from Augusta the next day, and he quarantined for 2 weeks in a hotel room. Normally, he would have, just by virtue of him playing in the United States, I've seen 15 to 18 Japanese journalists on the beat every day, just covering his day-to-day action on the tour. Now you add the fact that he's won the Masters and become the first Japanese male to win a major championship and the second male from Asia to win a major. Now you just exponentially get more attention. But I think there's still so many limitations on travel, particularly overseas. Credentials aren't as easy to get as they might have been in the past. So Hideki's a guy, John, that likes to kind of keep to himself anyway, pretty private person. So he probably is not too discouraged by this development. And maybe by the time things get back to normal, maybe we're 18 months removed from the Masters and it's not as big a deal. But I know he's a hero back home, and he's only played one tournament since, and that was last week, and he made the cut, had a respectable week, but he's looking to get things going here, and wouldn't be surprised at all to see him on the leaderboard.
So he wasn't upset that there was no brass band at the airport, no parade to take him to his
Apparently not.
home.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Tom, great stuff as always. Thank you so much. And we always like to forward promote. We're going to do a couple hours of the old Rich Show from Olympic Club on Sunday, the 6th of June. And very happy if you're able to join us for part of that. We're gonna get Mitch wired in, and we'll get you going. And being a Sunday, lots of great stuff. And I know you'll be at Memorial, so we'll have a lot of golf to talk about that Sunday morning for a couple hours.
Sounds like a reunion show. I'm always up for one of those. So I look forward
great.
to it. All right.
All right. There's Tom Spencer with CBS Sports. And thank you so much, Tom, for your time. And we'll see you down the road, and we'll talk soon. Thanks so much.
Great to see you, John.